Okay, hi everyone, to our lightning talk session. We've got 5 fantastic, hopefully, lightning talks lined up, 5 minutes each. So we'll be timing them. Well, Jez will be timing them very, very strictly to make sure we stay on time. Zsolt, our first speaker is here. Can I just check? Second speaker, Petr, are you here? Second speaker, third speaker, Matthew. There we go. Fourth speaker, Lee is here. Fifth speaker, Bart.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, all 5 speakers are here. All 5 speakers are ready. You know your order? Cool. Zsolt.
Floor's yours.
Cool. So, hi, my name is Zsolt, and one of my hobbies are answering weird mapping-related questions on social media. So, for example, if someone asks me where is the place in Hungary that is the furthest away from a Kossuth street, now, as a context, Lajos Kossuth was a famous Hungarian statesman, and in Hungary, most streets are named after him. So, there's like one Kossuth street. It's much more common than High Street. And for mapping geeks, he's also the only county's namesake which takes 2 places in Iowa. So back to the original question, it's right there in the corner, it's 17 kilometers away from the nearest Kossuth street. But fortunately, sometimes I actually get some more useful questions. Something like, does anyone have any idea for a section of the National Blue Trail that is between 15 to 20 kilometers long and can be accessed by leaving the car at point A, taking public transport to point B, and then walking back to point A? So again, context time, National Blue Trail is the first waymarked long-distance walking route in Europe. This is now around 2,600 kilometers long, with an official guidebook and the certificate you can obtain when you complete it. There's no time limit, and you can complete the route in sections. So that's why you know the question. So what data would we need? Obviously, we need the official route available from the official website, so that's good. We need public transport data. OpenStreetMap is not the best source for that, unfortunately. We do have, fortunately, however, for Hungary, proper GTFS data for the long-distance buses, from Volánbusz and from Budapest, the capital city. Trains, not so much. They really try to hide their GTFS data. You need to go through lots of loops, so they don't want that to be published. And finally, we do need the walking routes between the bus stops and the actual Blue Trail route. OpenStreetMap is actually quite good for that. What tools will we need? QGIS, this is mainly for manual editing and to make sure that the data looks nice. Postgres with PostGIS and PG routing for getting the routing information done and bulk route calculations. And I use OpenTripPlanner for parsing the GTFS data and to have like a local public transport connection system in place so I can do the stuff in bulk. How to do this? Lots of things like this. You can find it on the website if you're actually interested, but I'm definitely not going to talk about the code. But basically, first, lots of manual and semi-manual cleanup. You need to make sure that the Blue Trail, the OpenStreetMap, and the GTFS data all line up. So that's part 1. Next, run a custom script that go through each viable section of the trail, find the nearest bus stop, use OSM data to calculate the walking route, and then use OpenTripPlanner to actually see whether there's a viable bus route between the two. This is done in bulk. The whole calculation for the entire took around 10 hours to finish on my computer. And finally, you need a website. You obviously want to make sure that the data is accessible for people who want to find nice routes. The website over here, unfortunately, is Hungarian only right now. You can definitely use Google Translate. It works quite okay. And if anyone's interested, I can definitely do the translation. So here's like one example of what the tool would provide. So if you are in Budapest and you actually want to have a nice stroll and do the National Blue Trail, at least a section of the National Blue Trail, you could actually go by car to MapLibre factory, take the bus route that's in orange to Hűvösvölgy, which is the next step, then go along the route, obviously in blue, back to the original destination, which was MapLibre factory, get into your car and head home for a nice shower and some drinks probably. Now, future, I really want to do something similar for Scotland. Unfortunately, the data is just not there. No good free data of walking routes. Walk Highlands is the biggest database, but the licensing is opaque and they're quite unfriendly to people who try to use their data. Public transport, England has a good bus database, Scotland most of them who are in England do that, but again, rural, local buses, they're just missing. So basically, yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. And if you got mesmerized by the furthest away point stuff, if you're wondering where the furthest away point in Britain from a pub is, that's just right over there in Sutherland. Thank you.
So hello everyone. Today my name is Peter, and I want to show you how we use OpenStreetMap data in commercial software. We have a software for vehicle route planning, for optimization. So you have a warehouse, which is that red dot, and you have a bunch of orders or stops which you have to visit. It doesn't have to be goods. It could be patients that you bring for dialysis to hospital. It could be doctors, and you collect the blood samples, which are taken back to laboratory, things like this. So, and our task is to optimize and create the routes and respect all the limitations which are there. So this is the end result. Each color represents a route. For us, as we use the lorries and heavy good vehicles for the deliveries of goods, for us absolutely crucial are the limitations, the road signs. So that's most of our edits in OSM and in countries where we operate. And when we enter a country, we really put tons of edits of this because these are usually missing. So max height, max weight, max length, hazardous goods not allowed, and things like this. And sometimes the updates in the maps are not quick enough because we update the maps once a week, and it takes us about 1 day to process the data and update it. But the reality is sometimes quicker, especially in some areas, like I want to show you the Ukraine, when we have a bunch of users in Ukraine, and there's a war zone, and it moves, and it moves very quickly. So this is a polygon which, if somebody speaks Ukrainian or Russian, you can read that it's a war zone border. So they have to really change it like every day, and they should decide about the risk when they want to travel, if they want to go a little bit to the war zone or not at all, and they take a detour and make longer routes. The problem also is, especially around this war zone, the bridges, because they are usually or very often damaged and destroyed, which is reflected in the OSM data. That's no problem. But the problem is that the users, the mappers, they don't want to do the edits that the bridge was fixed or there's a pontoon bridge, because if they do it, then it will be damaged again. So we have to have in our software an extra layer, so they do the edits at a bridge just for them, not publicly. So this is how it looks close to the war zone. That's the war zone, that big polygon. And those edits there are either normal changes, like this road where you can go, but it's too narrow, so we don't want to go there. Or these are the damaged, usually bridges or some infrastructure roads that is not accessible at the moment. And on top of that, I don't know if you can see it, we enrich the OSM data with the speeds, because our users, they have GPS units in the cars, so we collect the speeds. And you know it from the Google, so for each road, we compute some average, what speed is achieved on that particular part of the road, and we compute it separately for small cars, big lorries, heavy good trucks, and use it for optimization. And of course, it would be nice if we can push this data back to OSM, but we don't do it, so that everybody can use it for other purposes. So I have 1 minute, so maybe I will finish, and I will ask if you have some questions. No questions? Save 1 minute. Good.
Sorry?
Yeah.
What was the name of your product again?
Oh, it's Rinkai. We just randomly pick numbers. It's usually a problem for us to create a name. So we have a map of Tokyo, of subway, and when you name it, we just point to the map. And Rinkai is a line in Tokyo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt White. I'm originally from the United States, but I live in France now, so I didn't have to come too far. I'm going to talk about some things I've been working on for the past few years. So it's a kind of whole mapping stack. The top of the stack is free open source Maps app. So if you know Organic Maps or OSMan, something like that. It runs on every major platform, iOS and Apple Silicon Mac OS, Android, Windows, Linux. There's a vector tile server, so you don't have to download offline region first. You can zoom anywhere and immediately see everything. The catch is that that just runs on a $10 a month VPS, so there's no guarantee or SLA for that. There's multiple different map styles, and the app is lightweight and GPL licensed. Very customizable, so there's no URLs hard-coded anywhere in the app. Everything is a JavaScript plugin. All the scene styling is with a YAML style, and you can edit it. There's custom shaders for doing map overlays. You can stack any layers you want for like raster maps, different overlays. Has basic features that you'd find in similar apps, so recording tracks, editing tracks, saving routes, some less common features like it'd be import all your photos and see them as saved places in the maps, highlight routes and boundaries. So it has 3D terrain, so this is an example with OpenStreetMap stuff overlaid on I think Bing Earth imagery. You can see like ski routes, hiking routes. This is an example of a transit layer. So if you have all these bus routes and you're not gonna be able to tell when one bus route is, if you say tap on one and hit the I don't know if hit that button there, it'll highlight the route. Similarly for like hiking, so these green or brown icons there, if you tap on that and then tap that same icon, you can see the whole route. Same for the boundaries of places. Like for hiking, I try to be responsible and show stuff with higher stack scale in a different color, like free ride ski color, so like there. Stuff with low visibility as a different dashing. So the map engine is based on this Tangram ES from MapZen, which is, if you've heard of that, it's a company between like 2013 and 2018 went out of business, but everything is open source. I added a bunch of features to that, like 3D terrain, embedded SVG resources, more raster format support, and that's MIT licensed. And then the tile server builds tiles on demand. There's a simple schema in C++, but it's based on the tile maker Lua API, so it should be pretty straightforward. The schema itself is basically just using unmodified OSM tags. So the decisions to make are related to which layers to have, and these are the layers. And I included some tags to help with like importance ranking for POIs. Most of the work is done by this geodesk library, if people are familiar with that, because that lets you quickly find all the features for a tile. And the next version of this geodesk has like minutely update or supports updates. So these tiles should be updated on quickly. So like if you wanted to set up a whole world vector tile server, that's all you had to do there. Yeah, so I think There's a QR code if you want to check it out.
Amazing. Right? Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning. Open geofiction, so all the same tools of a place that doesn't exist, but it's got a focus on realism. It's not any of the science fiction sort of stuff. There are people that do that. That's different people. But because it's all based on the same, platform, the same database, we use the same map editors, other tools. That's what open geofiction is. And something that's been worked on recently is mapping of aviation data. So one of our problems is that people like lore, they like creating lists, but they also leave. So the website, the wiki site becomes a massive mess, which, a bit like OSM wiki, it builds up data, and it needs managed. We put a lot of effort into tidying that all up, but then want to keep that interest, actually serve that need of creating these sort of bits of additional content, but in a way that's based off of the map data. So we have, the solution is a bit of a complex overpass query, which then gets massaged by a Perl script into a collection of JSON files, which we then display in the wiki site using external data and multi-map extensions. So we run that hourly, which then gives us a result of all this data that we can display in tables on the website. We can also overlay it on the map. We can click, get extra information. But the important bit is when, if we look at all these countries that don't exist, people go, right? The country gets blanked. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to manually go and delete, 200 relations. So this is picking up ownership information from another JSON file, merging it in, and it excludes countries that are no longer, existing. So it greatly reduces the ongoing data management task. It's self-managing. And that's that. One of the things with open geofiction is it's the same tools, but we end up adding in more tooling around them. This is a good example, but our coastline process is another one, because in the real world, the coastline is changing through erosion, but it's a slow process. Here we've got mappers inventing new coastlines. So something that's a weekly occurrence, for updates in the real world becomes something that we run twice an hour. Country boundaries are the same problem. We have to keep country boundaries, good relations. So we run that hourly. So it's extra. So I've linked here for that script, but there's a whole bunch of other scripts that are dealing with this and similar sort of problems. Any questions?
Well, what is the fiction that you produce?
Everyone's open to their own fiction, so within sort of certain constraints, there's no orcs and all that sort of nonsense. But, if you...
Writing stories about how much ones.
Well, no, it's purely focused on the mapping. That's the main focus. You do get other people that, write novels set in the fictional country as well. There's themes going on here. There's areas that are quite like Europe, areas that are quite like America, strange mixes going on as well.
So what's the biggest joy from it?
Most of my time spent coding on it. I used to map, but not too much. There's lots of maintenance of it as well. But I think people like getting lost in the fiction. It's imagination, it's creative.
I have a question. So, because this is a fictional map, how do you solve arguments about the fictional, like if two people are arguing about something, how do you solve it since it is indeed fiction in the end?
Okay,
Mind repeating the question into the mic, please?
how do we solve fictional arguments and disagreements?
No, about the fictional data.
About fictional data?
What's real with the data is fictional.
Benevolent dictatorship is my favourite approach, but there's more enlightened admins as well.
Hey, we have one final speaker.
Hello, everyone. Last but not least, so sorry that you didn't get any coffee this morning, but still, I hope you have some attention for my talk. So hi, my name is Bart Louwers. I've been working for MapLibre for the past almost 4 years now, and this is actually my job. So I'm very happy that I'm able to do that. So who is here of MapLibre? Right. So quite a lot of people. So MapLibre is a map rendering toolkit. It does real-time rendering, so it creates really maps with a nice user experience with continuous zooming, runtime styling. It's actually a fork, started out as a fork of Mapbox. So we're very fortunate of all the work that they already put in before, while it was still open source. And MapLibre is a continuation of that. Of course, OpenStreetMap data and MapLibre is like bread and butter. OpenStreetMap is by far the most widely used data source for MapLibre-based maps. And it's very likely that MapLibre will show up on the OpenStreetMap.org website now that they're shifting to vector-based maps as well. So I just like to go through who's using MapLibre because that gives you the best sense of what MapLibre is and what it can best be used for. So of course our sponsors are using MapLibre. That's actually, the sponsors are the reason why I was able to work professionally on MapLibre as maintainer. So Amazon is using MapLibre in their trucks. Microsoft is using it for Bing Maps. And there's a whole bunch of navigation apps. If you download any random navigation app, there's a good chance that it's using MapLibre. In fact, I was in a hostel in Dundee today, and my bunkmate worked on a MapLibre based app that I didn't even know of. So that's pretty fun. Oh, he's sitting over there, right, in the red. Street Complete is another nice example of an app that's using MapLibre now. They switched from Tangram to MapLibre and saw a great crash reduction rate. So it's pretty stable. The official Wikipedia app is using MapLibre. Grab Maps, they used to have their own fork, but they realized maintaining a fork is quite expensive. So they actually are rolling out MapLibre across Asia in this week. Grab is like the Uber of Southeast Asia. They needed support for rendering complex scripts, which you do with a library called HarfBuzz. It's a complicated talk on its own, but we do have support for that now. This is another interesting example. Hud Maps is actually starting to build some 3D functionality on top of MapLibre. Ukraine is actually using MapLibre. So on the drone application, to visualize where drones are flying and where the shells are hitting, there's one company that has integrated MapLibre in their drone software. This is another interesting example. So Rivian, very popular in the United States, they build trucks, and for their navigation system, they are using MapLibre. And interestingly, first thing that I hear of this, they're actually not using OpenStreetMap data, but they're using Google Maps data. So I know what you're thinking, boo, Google Maps, but you have the freedom to use your own data with MapLibre, which is pretty interesting. This is another example. This is basemap.de. It's a project from the German government to create a map. And what they're doing is they're using government data inside Germany and OpenStreetMap data outside Germany. So you can mix and match, you can bring your own data, you can style the map to your heart's content. And I think that's one of the strengths of MapLibre. So our main projects are the renderers for both web and for native. Native works on a bunch of platforms, including Qt, Flutter, React Native, whatever you can think of. But we also have other projects, such as Martin, a tile server, which can serve vector data live from a PostGIS database. and Maputnik, which you can use to conveniently create MapLibre styles. So today at 1:30, there's actually, I'm giving a workshop how you can create your own base map and how you can visualize that the base map with MapLibre. So I hope to see you there. So if you want to join our discussion or learn more about MapLibre, join our go on our socials. We put out a monthly newsletter, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have on our Slack, which you can find on maplibre.org/community. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. I guess we have time for one question, if there's a question. If not, oh, okay.
Other than the commercial difference, would you say there is much difference in this point where like Mapbox GeoJS is going versus MapLibre?
So I have no idea, honestly, because so I'm really cool. I know Mapbox is really doing cool stuff. I've seen a presentation yesterday, so I know a little bit what they're doing now. But we try not to look at Mapbox, right? And we encourage our developers not to look at what Mapbox is doing or even be inspired by Mapbox, because like keeping our software open source and making sure we don't copy any proprietary code is very important for our project, because that's one of the biggest risks to our project, right? So yeah, I don't know, but we're doing our own thing. For example, to give an example, so we have globe support now, but we also have MapLibre tile. So we have our own tile format, which yeah. So we have our own developments, basically, our own priorities, and yeah.
Okay, let's
Okay, thank you so much.
thank the whole speakers.